A New York City jury is deciding the fate of the former president of the United States as we speak. And I got to tell you, there's some very, very weird things going on. One of the weirdest being that we don't seem to know what this crime is, shall we say, in this particular case against the former president of the United States. And yet, it's a possible felony. Crazy stuff. But there's a very good sign, I think. And we're going to talk about that. Hello, welcome to the show, everyone. I am Trish Regan. This is the Trish Regan Show. Do me a favor, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the button there, the bell, so you know when I'm live every single day. We're going to have quite a couple of weeks here because we got this going on, and then we got Hunter coming up, and then we have an election, ladies and gentlemen, which means the fate of the country very much hangs in the balance. And I'll tell you, this case is no exception. This is weird. This is just weird because this judge read some really weird instructions to the jury yesterday afternoon. I'm relieved that they're coming back with questions. I consider that a good sign, and we're going to get to that. But first of all, Judge Merchan, and we know he has his conflict of interest because his daughter raises money for Democrats, including the likes of Adam Schiff. Remember him, star of the Schiff Show, has formerly worked for Kamala Harris's campaign, etc. So you get the drill. In other words, she makes her living based off of some of these trials. She'll likely benefit and is benefiting from this trial because she runs a social media company that sends out emails and tries to raise money. She's raised some $93 million thus far for the Democrats off of these trials. So yes, Judge Merchan has his conflicts, but the concern here is exactly how far are they going to take this, all right? How far is Merchan willing to go? The charges against Donald Trump include falsification of business records with the intent to cover up a crime. And the intent to cover up the crime is what changes this from a misdemeanor into, ladies and gentlemen, a felony. I mean, they want to convict him of a felony, but there's one big question hanging out there that no one can really seem to answer, and that is, what's the crime? In all seriousness, what is the crime here? They're trying to make some vague connection between the hush money thing, but let me tell you, NDAs, you may not like them, but they're not criminal. You have every right to ask for an NDA. You can pay someone off, and then, by the way, they need to keep quiet. That's how it works. It's done all the time, and you know, people may say, oh, it's ugly, this, that, and the other, but it's not a crime. So if he falsified, and that's big, if he falsified the business records, first of all, that would just be a misdemeanor. But what kicks it up to felony is because he was allegedly trying to cover up a crime, except nobody knows what the actual crime is. And so the judge said to the jury yesterday afternoon, oh, no, you don't have to worry your pretty little heads about that. Don't you worry about the crime. I mean, there's three possibilities. And the three possibilities include violations of the Federal Election Campaign Act, otherwise known as FECA. Okay, so violations of the Federal Election Campaign Act, falsification of business records, or violation of tax laws. Okay, so Judge Merchan wants them to say, okay, he's guilty of one of these three things. Maybe it's falsification of business records. But if you say, okay, he's guilty of that, you still haven't been able to prove what the other crime was, right? I mean, that's the really messed up thing. I mean, he's saying, okay, you must conclude unanimously that there was a violation of one of these things, but you don't have to unanimously agree on what was actually unlawful. So how is this even a case? I mean, try and follow that logic. Let's go to Drew, do we have a copy of the Federal Election Campaign Act FECA violation that they're trying to say that he may be in violation of? I want to show you guys this. This is section 17152, conspiracy to promote or prevent election. So this is one of the things that he could be theoretically in violation of, according to the prosecution. And one of the things that Judge Merchan is telling this jury to look at, any two or more persons who conspire to promote or prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means and which conspiracy is acted upon by one or more of the parties thereto shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Of course, it's just a misdemeanor in this particular case. I guess maybe the combo of the finances plus this is what kicks it up to a felony. But by the way, this is weird. This in and of itself, section 17152. I mean, what do you think elections are other than a group of people getting together and conspiring to promote a certain candidate and get that candidate into office over another one? They're preventing one while seeing another succeed. I mean, that's what and that's, by the way, why this is usually not used. Don't forget, Alvin Bragg didn't want to use this. Alvin Bragg didn't want to bring the case. Originally decided not to, as did the guy before him, yet when it came to his election time, he decided, what do you know? It was time to bring the case. Political motivation. But Judge Merchan, I mean, it isn't going to be embarrassing for him when he gets egg on his face if he gets a guilty conviction out of this. And that's a big if, because I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the questions that they're asking and I'm thinking, okay, at least there's one intelligent person in the room, except that there's this really vast field. I mean, for Judge Merchan to say, you don't have to agree on what the crime is. You just agree in theory he's guilty of one of these three things. Wow. You're going to send a guy away when you can't even agree on what he's guilty of and when you're not even, none of us are really sure what the actual crime in this particular case is? Wow. Okay. Messed up stuff. Anyway, let's go to the questions that the jury had just about 3 hours into deliberations just yesterday. Remember, they've been deliberating today. We'll see if more questions come in. They had this. It was reported on by CNN. I want to go to the clip.
The buzzer, then the note. What can you tell us, Paula?
All right. So they received a note from the jury, and it contains 4 different requests. We're getting these live updates. They're coming in real time from our colleagues. One of the requests is, the jury requests David Pecker's testimony regarding the phone conversation with Donald Trump while Pecker was there might be a little typo here, was in a meeting. So this is something that we've signaled they might ask for, is specific portions of testimony from key witnesses, because they do have a laptop that contains a lot of the documents at the heart of this case, but they don't have transcripts from witness testimony. And obviously this case in many ways is heavily reliant on the testimony of witnesses. So we fully expected that they would come back and ask for additional portions of testimony. Here they're asking for a specific portion of testimony from David Pecker. Now, another one of the requests was Pecker's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting. Now, there is another request for Cohen's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meetings. Those are 3 of the 4 requests. We're getting these live updates. This is interesting, though, that 2 of these requests relate to the Trump Tower meeting. This is the 2015 Trump Tower meeting that prosecutors argue began this alleged conspiracy to try to suppress negative stories to help Trump win in 2016. We're learning the additional request that has come in is, again, Pecker testimony about a decision not to finalize and fund the assignment of McDougal, of one of the aspects of the deal with McDougal. Again, this is coming in real time.
Okay, so they have questions, and I consider that a good sign at least. But then again, I'm telling you guys, anything could happen given these really vague instructions. And what will happen, because I don't think there's any kind of legal precedent for this. Again, I'm not a legal scholar. I'm going to be fully transparent. You know, I have my strengths and weaknesses. I'm an intelligent enough person, though, to have some basic understanding of the law. I actually spoke with a tremendous legal scholar off the record this morning who kind of laid this out and said it is absolutely bonkers. Like there's no real precedent that anybody's quite aware of where you could just say to a jury, hey, like, you know, go for anything. Go for anything. I mean, they just want to convict him of something. He's guilty, guilty, guilty. You think he's guilty of this. I think he's guilty of that. Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. As long as you unanimously agree on any of these 3 things, we're there. So you just have to hope that somehow these New Yorkers, and they're New Yorkers, and, you know, New Yorkers don't really like Donald Trump. You have to hope that this is not them trying to just make a point. you have to hope that some people actually do believe in the system. You have to hope that there's somebody on this jury that's smart enough to say, this doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I think that they're smart enough because they're going back and they're asking for more information. And they want to understand these instructions, and they want to go back and read the transcripts of the testimony. That I consider a good sign. But ladies and gentlemen, what's going on with the judge? I mean, this is why Elise Stefanik is launching an investigation into how it is that Judge Merchan got picked for this assignment. Not to mention 2 other Trump-related assignments. And what are the odds of that? 3 times in a row. You know, if I flip a coin 3 times, what are the odds of me? That's a good math problem for somebody, okay? Maybe we can work. Maybe I work on that with my kids tonight, right? That's a good statistics problem. What are the odds of you getting the exact same, you know? And by the way, it's different than a coin because you had 24 jurors to pick from. 24 judges, and somehow Judge Merchan's name comes out of the hat every single time. My gosh, he should play the lottery, right? With odds like that, he might as well. There's something really strange about him getting picked all 3 times for all the Trump cases. When they say it's completely random, there's no way that that is random. I mean, again, if it were, then somebody ought to be playing the lottery there because that's just bonkers. So you've got a judge that seems to have been handpicked by someone. Again, just being honest about the odds here. Good math problem. And a judge who is trying to encourage people to turn something that would be a misdemeanor into a felony, but yet can't define what the actual felony is. Okay, so remember how this goes. They're trying to say that there was a falsification of business records with an intent to cover up a crime. But no one knows what the crime was because actually having someone sign an NDA is not a crime. I mean, between this and the $500 million Letitia James was trying to get out of him. Remember, it got reduced to 175. Between the $500 million, between Jack Smith and his escapades. I mean, they're trying to get Alito off the court now, off of all decisions resolving Trump or involving Trump because there's such fear. There's such fear that they're not going to win. They're not going to win this time because you know what? They got one lousy candidate. Meanwhile, the media is, if you ask me, really conspiring against Trump for Biden. And what's incredible about it all and exciting about it all is that it isn't really mattering. Not mattering at all, because when you look at the polls, it's not having an effect. Anyway, I want to go to what the legacy networks, the NBC, ABC, CBS networks are doing right now. Our friends over at the Media Research Center, they're otherwise known as Newsbusters. These guys put together a study. They actually analyzed something like 640 minutes, lucky them, of ABC, CBS, and NBC coverage. And they said that, first of all, they've doled out 10 hours, 640 minutes of coverage to this particular trial. But in their coverage, none of the networks actually said that the DA, Alvin Bragg, was actually a Democrat and a partisan one at that. And that never comes up. Only 3. They said out of the 110 evening news broadcasts, only 3 actually hinted that Bragg was a Democrat. And, so much for this whole idea of guilty until proven innocent, because viewers heard the word criminal used 111 times in relation to the presumptive GOP nominee, slightly more than once per story. They also just totally buried Michael Cohen's perjury conviction. 96% of TV's Cohen coverage during the past 6 weeks omitted Cohen's perjury conviction. This is a guy who is a known liar, But you're not going to hear that in the mainstream media, let alone the fact that he stole tens of thousands of dollars from the Trump Organization. That never got to see the light of day. They never even reported on the fact that he was kind of a lousy witness to have in the first place. And then they also, of course, hid Judge Merchan's conflicts. They hid them entirely. You know, we had Laura Loomer on the show. Laura explained those conflicts, which she was one of the first to report on. And those conflicts basically stemmed from Judge Merchan's daughter's interest in this case. Well, they didn't do that over on network news. No. They never reported on what his daughter did, never reported on the donations, which are kind of bizarre for a judge to be donating. I know it was only $10 and $15, but why would you do that? One was to, quote, stop Republicans. That was one organization. And then he also gave a few bucks to the Joe Biden campaign. No one in network television actually reported on that. We're doing that here. And then, this is great. I want you to see this guy. This guy actually earned himself a headline in the New York Post. This would be Mr. Weissman, who you might remember from the Mueller prosecution. The New York Post wrote on how he has kind of a man crush. A man crush on Judge Merchan. The guy, Judge Merchan, who I just told you about, can't seem to define any kind of crime. Just says, you know, if you feel he might be guilty of this, that, or the other, literally this, that, or the other, then you can be unanimous in the guilt. Yeah, this is a New York Post headline. This is just great. Top Mueller prosecutor declares man crush on Trump hush money trial judge. The former prosecutor for the Mueller investigation said on Wednesday that he deeply admires the judge overseeing former President Trump's hush money trial in New York City. He went on and on and on about his voice, Judge Merchan's voice, how he just wishes this could be on audio because the voice itself, oh my gosh, it's nauseating. But you got to see it. Okay, so let's play the clip on MSNBC. This is Weissman talking about how much he just loves this judge.
As you've noted, with respect to Judge Merchan, I mean, I am like now, you know, I have like a man crush on him. Right. He is such a great judge that it's hard to see that the jurors wouldn't have the same impression. I mean, you just keep on thinking, if you looked in a dictionary for like judicial temperament, that's what you get.
Looking at your commentary, Crystal Swagger says, that just makes me feel queasy. Yeah, I mean, queasy. He's got this man crush on him. He thinks he's so great. He's going to get on MSNBC and talk him up. He thinks he's so great because, oh, this guy's so clever. He's just inventing stuff on the fly, telling the jury in a really calm, cool, collected way. You know what, guys? Don't worry. I realize you may not be unanimous in terms of what you think the actual crime might be. It could be this. It could be this. It could be this. But remember, if you think it could be anything, then you are unanimous. Right? You're going to, what, send a president to jail because nobody can decide? You know, I'm stunned. And don't you think for 2 seconds that this isn't orchestrated. Don't think about that at all, because you did have the number 3 in the Biden Department of Justice actually step down and join Alvin Bragg over here on this side of things so he could help prosecute Trump in this case. Don't forget, you had Fannie Willis and the boyfriend, Nathan Wade charging Fulton County voters all kinds of money because he was making so many trips to the White House, and then Fannie and Nathan got to hang out at some kind of event. They won't exactly give us any details with Kamala Harris. I think you'd have to be a pretty naive person to assume that there was absolutely no talking on this side of the aisle to that side of the aisle, right? I mean, I think that it would be extremely naive of us to not assume that there's a little something going on. But leave it to Fox. Fox News reporter here who's outside the courthouse and their so-called legal expert trying to say, oh, absolutely, there was nothing that could have possibly, there was no, not that. No, because this is a New York thing. And let's be very clear, it's New York and Biden isn't pulling any strings whatsoever. Okay, we get her bias. Well, she was just destroyed by Alina Habba, one of the former Trump attorneys. And it's really quite something to see. And maybe she starts to back down in the end, I mean, she's not wrong in that it was a New York case. However, she would be really kind of living up to the dumb blonde thing if she doesn't think that this is not being orchestrated from up high. Here we go. Let's play the clip.
Listen, but the Biden administration's not responsible for this trial.
How can you say the Biden administration's not responsible for this trial?
It's a state trial. It's Alvin Bragg. Whether you think there's a political motive for him, it's not connected to the DOJ. I mean,
Shannon,
the feds passed on these election charges.
Shannon, you should look at how many logs they have of state officials, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, visiting the White House, and then tell me that this is not a Biden trial. I don't care.
The feds pass on this case is the point I'm
You're
making.
right. The feds passed on this case. Also, DA Cy Vance passed on this case. And
years
frankly,
ago, and then it came back.
And Bragg passed on this case. You know when it came back? When he decided to run for office. So tell me how that's not an indication that Joe Biden, who just sent his campaign down here with Robert De Niro yesterday, isn't a part of this. Frankly, any question that we had of that was squashed yesterday. And if you have even more concerns about whether he's involved in this, look at the fact that he is publicizing, literally publicizing for tonight to have a speech if a verdict comes out. That's a sad state of affairs. Meanwhile, our country is falling apart.
She's absolutely right. I don't know what the blonde Fox reporter was thinking on this one, other than maybe trying to kind of put that whole fair and balanced thing. But let's just call a spade a spade. And Alina's right. I mean, they sent the campaign down there. The guy who's running the communications department for the campaign shows up outside the courthouse. Come on. How much more proof do you need? And yeah, he was scheduling a speech. I mean, my gosh, it smacks of such desperation. Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, making an appearance on The View on the very same day they were hoping that they would get some kind of conviction. I mean, look, they may get it, but I'm going to tell you what. If they were, I mean, I don't think they should. It's bizarre. It will be overturned, ladies and gentlemen. It will be overturned, and then they'll look like a bunch of fools. And it would be overturned after the fact. They could also get a hung jury. Keep that in mind. I mean, Mershon may make them keep going back and back and back and back, but they may actually be in a situation where they're not able to decide on this because some people might actually be honest and say this doesn't actually make sense. If they get a hung jury, then again, I think they look pretty stupid. But we know they're stupid. We know they're very, very stupid people, and they're abusing the law by not actually having any kind of crime that they're going after him with. I mean, I thought that Letitia James was the weakest case. I go back and forth, because the further and further I get into these cases, I'm like, this is really weak. This is really strange. So the media, of course, is on their side. Even, if you ask me, Fox News. The institution, maybe not some of the individual reporters, but the institution itself may be on the side of the Biden administration, MSNBC, obviously, and then clearly the networks. They're all in the tank for Joe Biden. And yet none of it matters. None of it matters because when you look at these polls, what do you see? You see Donald Trump coming out ahead and ahead and ahead. Another readout on the polls from everywhere shows him anywhere from 1.5 to 3 points ahead. And that's without the likes of RFK Jr. or the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, any of those people. That's without them because the lead actually increases once those guys are in the mix. So this has not helped the Democrats. They can't quite figure it out. But I'm going to tell you, this is sort of code red at this moment in time. I think the White House is really starting to get quite worried because there was a new poll that just came out of Virginia. Now, let me give you some perspective on Virginia. Virginia hasn't voted red in some 20 years, right? This is like solid blue state. And a brand new poll has Donald Trump and Joe Biden tied in the state of Virginia. This is incredible. This is according to Roanoke College. 42% each from likely voters. Really amazing. I mean, again, every single election in the last 20 years has been blue. I mean, it used to be red back in the day. I was doing some research between 1952 and 2004. Virginia was typically red, but it fell into the Democratic column in every election since. You basically had a lot of people moving into the suburbs from Washington, D.C., really making it more left-leaning, and consequently, for 20 years now, they haven't been able to have any Republicans. The other state that you need to watch right now that is, again, very much in play is Minnesota. Now, that's perhaps even harder because if you look at Minnesota, basically that has been historically blue. Trump lost Minnesota by 7.1 percentage points in 2020 to Biden. He was defeated in Virginia, by the way, by double digits. So, wow, what a turnaround, right? Incredible, incredible turnaround. And this tells me the fact that he's getting even closer. Some of the Trump polling by the McLaughlin group actually shows them in a dead heat in Minnesota is pretty incredible. And then you factor in even New York City and New York State. Look, you go outside New York City and you see Trump signs everywhere, all over the state of New York. The problem, of course, is New York City. But it feels like that's starting to change too. Let's take a look at this information coming to us from Politico. Biden's leading 47% to 38% in New York. But that's a pretty tight margin there because don't forget, Biden beat him in 2020 by 23 points. Right, so you're narrowing. It was 61% to 38%. I mean, incredible. So now that lead is getting squashed. I mean, I would say that part of this is because some of the traditional demographic groups that he's thinking he can count on, Joe Biden, that is, they're just not there. I mean, take a look at this point. Biden is down 20 points in New York City, and Trump has gained 7 points compared to the 2020 numbers when 76% voted for Biden and 23% for Trump. The 14-point swing in New York appears to account for undecided voters, 7%, those who won't vote, 4%, and those who would cast their ballots for another candidate, 3%. Anyway, it's part of a whole series of polls that really show the current president is struggling. Really struggling. Key demographics, right? I mean, what did we talk about just yesterday about how he was up in the Bronx? He's up in the Bronx and he's talking to people that normally don't get anybody coming to see them, left or right. And so he's resonating and the message is working. And consequently, you have a lot of these key places now suddenly in place. So what does the left do? The left flips out. Thank you for the nice comments. Oh, Leslie, good to see you here. Thank you for telling everybody to like. Yes, guys, like it, subscribe. We got to really push it. Share it, make a comment, all that good stuff. It's so important right now. Really important. It is great to see you. Thank you for being here. And I'm glad you like the pink. Thank you. Quick shout out to our good friends over at Balance of Nature, balanceofnature.com. I take my fruits and veggies, vitamins every day from Balance of Nature. You should too. You can get a 35% discount if you go to balanceofnature.com. You use my name, code word Trish. Give them a call, 1-800-246-8751, 1-800-246-8751. Again, code word Trish, Balance of Nature. They get a ton of testimonials on their site about how terrific their product is. I've told you before that my kid's music teacher called me and said, hey, Trish, I listened to your show. I watched your show, which thank you for watching and thank you for calling and letting me know. But I got a kick out of it. One, that he was listening to the show, and two, that he was such a fan of Balance of Nature. He said he's been taking it for years and years and years. A lot of people have. They've been in business a long time. Again, I think vitamins are so important to having a healthy overall lifestyle, right? You need to take water, take your vitamins, eat well, exercise, all that good stuff. Balanceofnature.com. Look, the reality is, in this environment, the Democrats are really scared. And so because they have no policy to run on, and kind of the emperor has no clothes, they're going to keep using this idea of good versus evil. Literally those words. Dr. Jill Biden told us just yesterday on The View that you have to choose good versus evil. I mean, this is the kind of rhetoric that you're going to keep having and hearing over and over again. In fact, when you look at some of the commentators on MSNBC and CNN, one of the things that struck me was, do we have the Raphael Warnock clip? This Democrat from Georgia. I know we have two clips of him, Drew, but I want to play the longer one where he actually talks about the reasons why they're struggling with black voters and some of the traditional demographic groups and why Biden is so low in the polls right now. Warnock is trying to tell us that it's just because, people aren't paying attention right now. And once they do pay attention, they're going to realize all the fabulous hits, the home runs that Joe Biden has had. I'm like, sorry, buddy. There are no home runs there. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, let's go to Senator Raphael Warnock here out of Georgia talking to CNN.
Work to do with black voters. Why are they struggling?
Well, listen, as someone who preaches every Sunday, I can remind you that there's a reason why we show up every Sunday, and that is that people need to be reminded. And so I don't think that what the president and the campaign is doing is any different than what the preacher does every Sunday, reminding us of the good news. And the great thing for us is that we've got a lot of good news to share. We're talking about record low unemployment among African Americans. Black wealth has gone up 60% since before the pandemic. As a proud graduate of a historically black college, Morehouse College, I'm proud that the president has invested some $16 billion in historically black colleges and universities, all the while canceling student debt, which narrows the racial wealth gap. We've got good news to tell, and we'll be telling it between now and November.
Here's the thing. The people are feeling pain. People are feeling their personal economy, for one example. People still feel that they are hurting, and that is what we see in Donald Trump's way and rhetoric. That is what he is leaning into. Some of the analysis I've been seeing and how black voters are feeling, Senator, is 49% of black voters across 6 of the top battleground states have said that they would back Joe Biden. 4 years ago, it was nearly 9 in 10 voters nationwide cast their ballots for Joe Biden. And Harry Enton here at CNN had an analysis that has stuck with me that says that Trump has doubled support among black voters from this point 4 years ago, in part because he's polling in a quarter of black voters under the age of 50. If something isn't going wrong in terms of the Biden appeal, something isn't going completely right. Can you pinpoint what it is?
Well, as somebody who has been on the ballot and won 5 times in less than 3 years, I can tell you that if you stay on the roller coaster, you're going to get dizzy. We're going to see those polls go up and down between now and November. But at the end of the day, black people are smart, and they pay attention like all of our voters. The American people get it. And look, we are seeing global inflation. But the United States economy is doing well by any standard compared to others. Now, there's pain out there. The question is, what is Donald Trump going to do about it? What has he even promised to do about it? All I'm seeing is a campaign of retribution, revenge.
Okay, so this is where he's wrong. In fact, they try and turn it into that. Remember when he talked about the bloodbath regarding China and trade tariffs and everything, and somehow it turned into something else entirely? With a really, really dark meaning behind it. He's like, no, I'm just talking about trade. He actually is talking about trade. He is actually talking about making sure that we have more freedom for our businesses and lower taxes. And these are the things, by the way, that have worked. His economic team was fantastic. And so for this senator to sit there and say, well, I'm not hearing anything. Americans are like, well, we didn't get anything. I mean, Joe Biden, I don't know what you're thinking, man. But the idea that you somehow are trying to attribute the 9.1% inflation to Donald Trump, when actually, when Trump left office, it was 1.4% inflation. And then you came in, buddy, and you initiated a third COVID stimulus check. And you and Schumer put together this giant package to spend trillions of more dollars. And then you went around the Supreme Court's back to try and forgive all these student loans. What do you think you're doing other than printing money? I mean, the Fed's doing that too. But you're printing money, you're creating inflation. Simultaneously, you get us into a mess in Afghanistan. You get us into a mess over in Ukraine. And by the way, like, look, regardless of where you stand on any of these issues, you have to admit that there's been some kind of failure in diplomacy. A failure in diplomacy when you are losing lives. You know, it's one thing to lose money, but you're losing lives over in these places. And it's because of, in my estimation, failure by the Biden State Department. There's no leadership there. Look at what's happened on the border. I mean, this is what everyday people are saying, and this is why. You're seeing polling that shows a lot of Americans are wishing for better days. And don't forget, Trump typically doesn't poll that well, because who wants to admit that they're going to vote for Donald Trump? I mean, you're a bad person, right? You're choosing evil over good. according to Dr. Jill Biden. You hear and see how they demonize you. If you're someone, and that would be half the country, that may have voted for Donald Trump, and if you're going to vote for him again, they want to cancel you. They want to cancel you so fast. So what is this, a threat? You're going to threaten us? Look, it doesn't fly, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't fly. You know, I look at everything that's going on. We just look at gold prices up around nearly $2,400, and I think it's related. I actually do think that all of this stuff is related. Some of the fear that you see out there, because, hey, what are they going to do? They're going to cancel your bank account? I mean, look, certainly we hope it doesn't come to that, but I can understand the concern and the fear out there. And I do think that gold's part of a well-diversified portfolio anyway, and you know I'm a big believer in it, always have. So I encourage you to take a look. If you're looking at gold, call my friends over at American Hartford Gold. They're really terrific, wonderful, wonderful business. And fortunately, because if you say you know me, you'll get actually up to $15,000 in free silver, depending on what you are actually buying with them. So text Trish to learn more about the $15,000 in free silver. My name, Trish, to 65532. Again, you can text Trish, Trish, to 65532. You can just do it right now on your phone, or call them 1-844-495-1115. Or, this is my favorite URL of all times. I put it in the show notes. Drew, I don't think we're going to have to make one, I think, but it's trishlovesgold.com. Okay? You can't forget that. Now, can you? trishlovesgold.com. I mean, I like gold. I'm not a materialistic person. I just think it's actually important for everybody to take care of themselves. And there is a portion of your portfolio that probably should be, and I'm not your financial advisor, and everybody has different needs, et cetera, so I'll qualify it with that. But I do think that this is an attractive investment, and certainly has proven to be one over the years. So trishlovesgold.com for more on how you can get $15,000. Let me just check the price of gold today. It's actually up $2,363 an ounce, up about 1%. I mean, a lot of things going on, right? Central banks all across the world are getting a little bit nervous. They don't have the same confidence in the United States of America, and thus they're looking at gold. Then you've got individuals that are like, I don't trust this government. Then you've got, well, crazy debt loads that just keep climbing, and politicians that seem to have absolutely no discipline whatsoever. I don't think that's necessarily going to change. It's something that kind of comes with both parties, unfortunately. And so what does it make for? It makes for an increasingly less stable dollar, a dollar that theoretically would be worth less in the future, hence the need for gold. Anyway, I want to move on to what the Democrats are doing with the Supreme Court. It's like the Democrats just want to wipe out the Supreme Court. Like the Democrats actually think the Supreme Court doesn't matter anymore. The Supreme Court should not have any say on things. The latest and greatest, ladies and gentlemen, is what they're doing with Samuel Alito. Justice Alito. So they were telling him that he has to recuse himself from all Trump-related cases because his wife had some kind of squabble with one of the neighbors, a neighbor who was a lefty and who got into some kind of shouting match with Mrs. Alito. And Mrs. Alito got so annoyed that she went out to her backyard or front yard and put her flag up upside down. Now, what everyone's saying in the media, and I just got to tell you, like, I know a lot of conservatives, I know people that are pretty deeply entrenched in the conservative movement. Nobody had heard of this before. Nobody heard that flying your flag upside down was somehow a J6 thing. Like literally no one. Like in fairness, I've asked everyone. Nobody heard of this. It was the first time I heard of it when I read in the New York Times that this was somehow a J6, supportive J6 signal. So Mrs. Alito was basically trying to give the middle finger, so to speak, to her neighbor because they'd had this altercation that was somehow politically motivated. And usually what flying the flag upside down has meant is some kind of distress signal. Anyway, it was her altercation with the neighbor, so much so that the Washington Post at the time chose not to report on the story. And they have since admitted, no, we didn't report on the story because we felt like it was a domestic sort of Mrs. Alito versus the neighbor. And he wasn't involved, so therefore it wasn't appropriate for us. Well, look, I guess everything's fair in love and war, and to the Democrats, this is some kind of war. So now they're coming out of the woodwork saying Alito needs to recuse himself because his wife flied the flag upside down. Well, Alito responded. He said, not doing it. And they're losing it. So my question is, what's next? What are they going to try? What are they going to pull? Listen to this guy. He's basically the water carrier for Joe and Hunter Biden. Dan Goldman, relatively new representative from the state of New York, who loves going on MSNBC with his newfound fame to just sit there and support no matter what. No matter what. He actually even volunteered that he helped train Michael Cohen, the star witness in the Trump trial case. And he's alleged to be a client of Judge Merchan's daughter. So very incestuous, shall we say. Anyway, let's go to Dan Goldman, representative from New York, trying to tell us that this is just horrible. Judge Alito, he needs to step down.
Well, you got a response.
Yeah.
What is your response to the response?
It's pretty shocking. The fact that Justice Alito thinks that he can be the judge and jury of his own impartiality flies in the face of Supreme Court precedent, flies in the face of the Constitution, flies in the face of federal law, and completely misapplies the standard that he is supposed to be applying, even given the fact that there's no binding code of ethics on him, and he essentially gets to decide this himself.
Yeah, he's the Supreme Court, Dan. Danny boy, Mr. Goldman, representative from New York that you are, the one that trained Michael Cohen. I mean, what's going on? You're training witnesses to testify against Trump? I guess you're not that busy in Congress. You get to go on TV all the time, train witnesses, and go after the Supreme Court. So what's your next move? I mean, simultaneously, you get the senator from Georgia, who we were just watching. He went on that CNN interview just yesterday and bragged about how Joe Biden totally ignored the Supreme Court when it came to forgiving student loans. It's like law and order seriously doesn't matter to these people. Watch.
And when the Biden administration set out to cancel student debt, which helps kids, I relate to this because I was the first college graduate in my family. I wouldn't have been able to afford college without Pell Grants and low-interest student loans. What did they do? They took us to court. And Donald Trump bragged that it was his Trump-appointed Supreme Court nominees who blocked the initial effort to cancel student debt. And with one hand behind his back, Joe Biden found a way, with people like me pushing him, to cancel student debt. So far, we have done $160 billion of student debt relief, and those numbers continue to climb. We've helped about 4 million borrowers, and the plan is that between now and the end of the year, that number will rise up to about 30 million borrowers. That's real help in the pocketbooks of ordinary Americans.
No, it's not. It's inflation. Okay, when you just give away money, it creates more inflation. You guys are trying to keep college prices down. You really think the way to do that is to just say, okay, well, we'll write this check to everybody who wants to go to college? It's almost like, dare I say, they get academia in their back pocket. They'll keep writing the checks so long as academia keeps producing these uber lefties that want to tear down the system. I mean, until it comes back to bite them in the you-know-what, they're going to keep doing it. And it's going to cost all of you in the meantime, right? By depreciating the value of your dollar. I mean, you made the economically wise decision, perhaps, to not go to college, maybe to start a business. Or maybe you decided you were going to pay off your loans. Or maybe you put your kid through college and you worked an extra job to do that. Whatever it is, it's not your problem that a bunch of lefties decided to go to school and then some more school and maybe or maybe not graduate. And now somehow you got to pay the bill when they knew what they were doing, signing on the dotted line. But in this kind of world, there are no consequences. You see? No consequences. You break the law, doesn't matter. You borrow a ton of money, you don't pay it back, doesn't matter. There are only consequences for people on one side of the aisle. And this is what Americans really and truly do not like. This will be more problematic for the economy, trust me. Now, it's being fought by various states. I don't think it's going to fly. But the idea that they're trying to effectively tear down the Supreme Court in real time. That's what we're looking at. And that's what you need to understand. That's why these stakes, I'm going to sound like them. They really are high. They're indeed very, very high. But keep in mind, there's one side only that's going after the other with 91 counts against the former president of the United States. 91 counts against him. So the question becomes, will a conviction help Trump? If it gets to that. I think it could. I think it could because people are so desperate for policy changes. Desperate for change. If you're one of them, I want you to go to americansforprosperity.org. I'm so pleased to have partnered with Americans for Prosperity because they care about all the same issues that I know you care about if you are here watching this show. Americansforprosperity.org. Inflation, healthcare, the border, our international standing. These are the things that are on the table right now. These are the things that we need to care about. These are the things I know they care about. And they have a point of view that you can't just win the Oval Office. You got to win it all, right? You need Congress. Right now, the polling suggests that we are going to get Congress. But you need it all in order to get anything through. Otherwise, you just have more fights and more people in the way. So americansforprosperity.org. If you're a policy wonk like me, you're going to like them. So go check them out. But what happens if Donald Trump gets convicted? We have to at least discuss that, right? He made the point just yesterday afternoon that, it's going to take something because they'd go after Mother Teresa if they could like this. And he's right. This is crazy stuff. Let's go to Donald Trump just yesterday.
Say, in listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country is a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job. And it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace. And I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see. We'll see how we do.
The reason he's saying that, guys, is because this is so bizarre. This is not a normal case. Again, the charges are that he falsified business records. They're alleging that he falsified business records. And if he falsified the business records, that would be a misdemeanor. But they're escalating this to a felony with the intent to lock him up, right? Put him in jail. And so somehow they've got to take this falsification of business records, if they can convict him on that, and say that the falsification was done with the intent to cover up a crime. But no one knows what the crime is. This is what just keeps getting me. It's insane. If you can't define what the crime is, then why are we even in the courthouse to begin with? So the judge has given the instruction, and this is why Donald Trump is saying, not even Mother Teresa could beat this, because you're trying to make the decision of what exactly was unlawful here. Was it the hush money, the NDA agreement? Nope, not illegal. So was it the falsification of business records? Okay, if it was that, then that would be one thing, but you wouldn't go to jail for that because that's a misdemeanor, right? Unless you have a judge like Judge Merchan that may want to put you in jail. So there's three things that Judge Merchan said you could find him guilty of, and you didn't have to be unanimous in this. And this is just so weird. He may have violated the Federal Elections Campaign Act, also known as FECA. Rule, what is it, Drew? 17, I think we have it. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you guys can see it. You're welcome to read more about this, but this is bizarre. So basically, you can't conspire to see somebody elected. Yeah, 17152, that's what it was. Conspiracy to promote or prevent an election. Any two or more persons who conspire to promote or prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means, and which conspiracy is acted upon by one or more parties thereto, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Okay, by the way, it's just a misdemeanor, but also, what are elections about if they're not about conspiring to promote or prevent the election of a person, right, into a public office. Now, what are the unlawful means? Because it's not unlawful to have an NDA agreement. Certainly you want to protect your family from more rumors and speculation. And I mean, it's perfectly legal to do that. You may not like it. It may not be pretty. But did they just do this so that they could sully him up and really make him seem pretty tawdry? Because, we didn't need to hear about what color pajamas he was wearing. It has no relevance to the case. Another reason why I think this thing will get thrown out, or at least wind up being appealed and then being thrown out, because they put Stormy Daniels on the stand with a bunch of tawdry details that were completely irrelevant to any falsification of business records or violation of tax laws. That's the third thing. Did he violate tax laws? I mean, we did learn that Michael Cohen, the star witness, is guilty of a felony, which would be theft, right? He stole from the Trump organization because he didn't think his bonus was big enough. We also know that he's lied multiple times on the stand. So, those are kind of serious crimes. But for some reason, we're here looking at Donald Trump. And Mershon is saying, go with any of the three. Multiple choice tests. You think it's A, B, or C? Anyone will do. And then you can be unanimous in your conviction. So that actually will help Donald Trump. I believe. I think people are so fed up. They're so disgusted by all of this that something like that helps him. And so he really is Teflon Don. They cannot stop him right now because Americans know what it was like under him. And they're actually looking back with a form of nostalgia saying, gee, times were easier then. I was paying a lot less for my groceries, a lot less for my gas prices. And Joe Biden, you may want to tell me, oh, things are great and we're the best in the world, right? Prettiest girl at the dance, not very good group of lookers. But sure, okay, the U.S. is doing better than every other country. We should. We are, thank you very much, the world's largest economy, the hegemonic power in the world, and the United States of America. We better be doing better than everyone else, Joe Biden. Don't use that as your claim to fame. Everyday Americans see through all of this. All of it. I want to turn to another story, and that would be Disney. Hey, Don, this is in honor of you. Don, who's on there telling everybody to like it. We got to get to 1,000 likes or Don's not going to be happy. Anyway, he follows Disney very, very closely. I know, Don, that you follow some of these legal channels as well very, very closely. So this is a show that should be right up your alley today. I want to point out that Nelson Peltz, the billionaire investor who leans more to the right than to the left and had the good common sense to say, hey, Disney, what the heck are you doing? Well, he's just exited, according to CNBC and New York Times. So these are reports right now. They have not been confirmed via any SEC filing, but it has been reported that Nelson Peltz has sold his Disney stake, and he got out at roughly $120 a share. Good for Nelson. We wrote about this over at 76 Research. 76 Research, that's my financial research company. I founded it with a longtime friend named Rob Horton, who had been on Wall Street for so many years, superstar, stock picker, fund manager. And he and I teamed up to create 76 Research with the idea that we wanted to make sure that you guys got a chance to get some of the very specialized research that wasn't tainted by all the Wall Street sort of backroom stuff that goes on, and good quality research that typically you only get on Wall Street. We wanted to make sure that everyday investors had a shot at getting this stuff too. So you can take that research, and we have like 10 to 15 picks in each of the portfolios, and create your own portfolio based on it. I encourage you to do that. We also have a special going on right now, 20% off. And I'm going to try and remember this code word. I told Rob, we got to get easier code words because Trish can't remember them. Things like Trish loves gold, that's easy. But this one is, let's see, what is it? 76 USA 24. 76 USA 24, 76research.com. You can just type that in and you'll get 20% off any of your subscriptions. But 76 Research, we did profile Disney. And let me just tell you, Peltz is a bright guy because he got out at, it's believed to be around $120 a share, which would put it near its highs. Remember how they had the big proxy battle, the big shareholder vote, and the shareholders, stupidly, if you ask me, decided to stick with Iger and Iger's approach to dealing with the company. Now, Iger is better than the other Bob, right? Like this is Bob 2.0 or 3.0, we can call him, because Bob Iger was first in this seat, and then it was Bob Chapek, and now it's Bob Iger again. So Iger's better than Chapek in the, I hope anyway, he's going to be more inclined to look at profitability. But without Nelson there saying, hey, what are you doing? What's the deal with Snow White and the 7 special people that we can't actually call dwarfs? You know, we got the tall one, the short one, the male, the female, everybody, you know, different races, different genders, the whole shebang, because we just want to sell tickets, right? I mean, what's the deal with Star Wars and all this, you know, stuff they got going on with the Star Wars franchise? You don't want to ruin the Star Wars franchise because you can't focus on good storytelling. And Nelson also had the point. This was a good one. Like, why do you just keep remaking the same stuff over and over again? Why don't you have anything new? Why is it all sequels? And by the way, while we're at it, who the heck is going to replace Bob Iger? Because Bob Chapek was no great shakes. And Iger has historically been very, very sensitive. And I actually know this. I've interviewed him many times. And one of the like no-go areas was, don't ask him about the succession plan. He never liked to talk about retirement because I think he just wants to stay in the job forever. Well, you know, we're all realists. And at some point, it's going to have to change. And if they don't have a succession plan, then the stock's going to go to like it's been doing. I mean, this is a stock that was up around $200 just a couple years ago. And let's see the wild ride it's been on. I think we have a stock chart, Drew. I want to show you this. 76 Research, we were looking at this. So this is actually going back to November when it was trading at, okay, here we go with my eyesight. Okay, so you were at $80. This is, I think, when Nelson got in. $80 a share. And then he rode this all the way up. He made a whole lot of noise. And then there was the big shareholder vote. And they voted to stick with Iger. And I guess that's when he got out. So, you know, Rob and I were saying, like, look, if it starts going down even further, it might start looking interesting again. I know a lot of you hate Disney, and I get it. But at some point, really, there might be some value, especially within the resorts section of the business. Like maybe entertainment's done, right? Entertainment's changed. Let's face it. You don't need to go to the movies anymore. You don't need to watch ABC News, a Disney product anymore. And you certainly don't need to watch this lady anymore. Does anybody still watch The View other than the clips that I show you so we can all laugh? I mean, this woman is utterly losing it. I don't know what she's going to do if Trump's elected again. Let's go to Whoopi Goldberg on The View. Disney owned.
I'm going to be, on day one, I'm going to be a dictator. Who says it to you, tells you, I'm going to put you people away. I'm going to take all the journalists, I'm going to take all the gay folks, I'm going to move you all around and disappear you. If that's the country you want, you know who to vote for. If that's not the country you want, you have to make a decision.
Okay, all right, again. The theme of you got to make a decision. You see, again, they have no policy. They got nothing good to run on. So it's just going to be good versus evil. And they're going to hammer that thing all day long. In fact, Jen Psaki, former communications director, was just on MSNBC within the last, 12, 24 hours saying, we got to stop with our accomplishments. Stop talking about the accomplishments and focus on Trump. Focus on how bad Trump would be, etc. So look, some people are getting that message, including Whoopi Goldberg over at The View. They have, of course, no accomplishments, so they can't focus on those things. They have only one thing to focus on, and that would be personality. But people are over it because you know what? They got burned. They got burned for the last 3 years because Biden is in office. Well, you know who else is about to get burned? Possibly it would be Whoopi Goldberg and all the big talent like Joy Behar that they have at ABC News. ABC News owns and produces The View. And let me tell you, people are not consuming media that way anymore. I mean, that may be in part why no one's buying what the big networks have been selling, which is Joe Biden. Because you're all coming to places like this, to YouTube, or other streaming platforms where you can get pretty authentic, pretty raw. You know, the sound bites don't always play. And, Drew and I, we were working together pretty hard. We got a few other people behind the scenes, but it is bare bones, no prompter, nothing pre-scripted, just really authentic stuff. It's very freeing for me. I love it, actually. And I think it's freeing for you as a viewer. Reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff, make a comment. But I think that this is part of the change that we are embracing right now as a society. And so people are getting their information in vastly different ways, and the networks are not going to be able to keep up with this anymore. So much so that Bob Iger himself, the CEO of Disney, he knows it. He knows it. He told my former colleague over at CNBC, David Faber, this at Sun Valley's big shindig last June, I believe. We have the tape. I want you to hear it.
Transformative work is dealing with businesses that are no-growth businesses and what to do about them, and particularly the linear business, which we are expansive in our thinking about, and we're going to look expansively about opportunities there, because clearly it's a business that is going to continue to struggle.
Well, let's stop there for a second then and let me ask you about it. We're talking, I guess, ABC, the network, the stations, but then the cable networks as well.
Yes, correct.
FX, Nat Geo. Is it possible you would look to sell them?
We're going to be expansive. I think if you can interpret what that word means.
Got it? Get it? We're going to be expansive. You can interpret what that means. I'll tell you what it means. It means that Disney wants to sell off its traditional television businesses, including, by the way, ESPN. And I have good sourcing suggesting that they are looking to private equity shops and even Nexstar Communications, which runs a great little network called News Nation. I'm actually on it tonight. And they're in talks with different possible players. Now, he hasn't sold it yet. He hasn't sold ABC News yet. Perhaps he'll wait till after the election, but I can guarantee you, whoever buys it, think about these private equity shops, for example, whoever comes in and buys it, they're going to want to make a profit. Well, the days of big television networks with 50 people working on a show, or probably 200 people that are working on The View, those days are over, okay? Because you don't need that many people to actually communicate. And you can actually, through this medium, target people pretty darn well. I mean, I'm sure you guys have had to sit through some ads and that kind of thing. Sorry, and I have some ads, but it's free. I mean, that's the good news. You can watch this for free. And, advertisers are a vital part of the business. But if an advertiser knows that they can find you because you like Trish Regan, and they know with certainty that they will find you here on the Trish Regan channel, it's very different than ABC News or The View, because they don't really know that they're going to find you. They don't really know that you have watched that commercial. The metrics aren't there to prove it. Versus here, where you actually have a very direct line to people as an advertiser, as do I, right, as a communicator, as an analyst, and you to me. And so it's a very different kind of thing. And because the cost of producing this are so much less, the advertisers are able to target who they want with purpose and more economically than if they were to advertise on the big networks. And so what happens to the big networks? Bye-bye. What happens to Whoopi Goldberg? Bye-bye. I mean, she's very proud of saying she has a contract. That came up the other day. She said, I have a contract. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, well, a lot of times, and it happens in television all the time, you sign the contract and then it's bye-bye, right? That's just kind of the expense fee they pay as you walk out the door. Maybe they'll honor her contract and treat it as a write-off. We're going to write off that loss of Whoopi or Joy or whoever else. I mean, I would think anybody who's making a lot of money at ABC would be on the chopping block when that sale happens, if it happens. It needs to happen. I mean, I don't think Disney can really survive without it. You can learn more about Disney. Look at one of our back issues of the 76 Report. I believe we wrote about it maybe 4 weeks ago or so. I encourage you to go to 76report.com. Sign up for the free subscription. Sign up for the 76 Report. Get the discount, 20% off. All right, I wrote it down, 76 USA 20. Type that in and you will get 20% off any of the subscriptions that you buy right there with that coupon code. Thank you. I'm looking at some of you guys are very protective of me on the chat, and I appreciate that. I caught that, and I think that we blocked that person anyway. It's wonderful to have you here. I mean that. We're in a tricky time, and I think that we're going to get this news any day now, and I think we need to be optimistic in that people really do have the ability to cut through the BS. In other words, they know what they're paying at the grocery store. They know what they're paying at the gas tank. They know what's going on in these border towns. They know what's going on in New York City. I mean, my gosh, New York City. I used to live there. I went to college there. I went to Columbia. Very different time, very different place at that point. And you look at New York City today, and it is not the city it was under Rudy Giuliani or Mike Bloomberg. They have tossed the ability to go after criminals just out the window. I mean, now you're in jeopardy if you try and save yourself from a criminal. It has become so chaotic and so bad, and the people are suffering. And so I think there's going to be change. I think New York is in play on the presidential level because everybody sees what's going on. Their DA is too busy going after Donald Trump, trying to get a conviction there, that they can't actually go after the real criminals. Thank you very much. And so regardless of how this turns out, I think that on the margin, no matter what, it helps Trump. I mean, if it's some kind of misdemeanor and they tied up everybody's time and resources, people are like, what? If it's a hung jury, they're going to say, really, what was that all about? I mean, if he comes back not guilty, then they're really going to have egg on their face. Eventually, it'll come back that way. Eventually, the case, I believe, will be tossed and thrown out of court. All of the legal scholars I have talked to suggest the same thing. There's no precedent for what Judge Merchan is doing. There's no precedent for any of this. I mean, other than in communist countries, right? Banana republics. That's what it's starting to feel like, for goodness sakes. Anyway, spread the word. It's great to have you here. Melissa, welcome back, one of our new members. Rick, thank you for the compliments. David Lorenzo, good to see you. Yes, you are a fierce crowd. I love that you rally for me. It is great to have you here. I will see you tomorrow. We got lots going on.